Picture the Strait of Hormuz right as the afternoon sun dips low, painting the saltwater in gorgeous shades of gold and deep bruised purple. It looks incredibly peaceful, but in just a few agonizing heartbeats, that calm ocean is about to be violently transformed into a sprawling, catastrophic graveyard of twisted metal. At exactly 4:25 in the afternoon, 132 trails of pure devastation violently punch through the skyline. The Southern Alliance is launching absolutely everything they have in their arsenal. Back in their command bunkers, arrogant leaders are literally popping champagne, utterly convinced they have just pulled off the ultimate checkmate. They are targeting the vital organs of the United States Fifth Fleet. They are picturing the supercarrier USS Sentinel snapping in half, dragging thousands of American sailors and the bruised ego of a global superpower down into the pitch-black abyss. But they are completely blind to a terrifying reality. The exact fraction of a second that blazing heat flare violently kicks out from the exhaust pipes of their rockets, the clock started ticking on their own absolute extinction. The thing you need to understand is that the United States does not flinch, and they certainly do not bargain with incoming missiles. While the enemy warheads are barely even climbing into the clouds, the unblinking satellite networks of the Space Force are already watching. It takes exactly 3 seconds for the Grim Reaper to sign the enemy death warrant. 3 single seconds. What happens next is miles away from a fair fight or a traditional battle. It is a clinical, cold-blooded technological purge. It is a terrifying 45-minute window where the Southern Alliance and their entire military pride are violently reduced to towering columns of toxic black smoke. We are talking about 2,500 American precision weapons crashing down on 132 outdated pieces of junk. Welcome to Operation Obsidian Scythe. Let me show you exactly how an entire naval empire gets wiped off the map before dinner. And hey, tell me in the comments where you are reading this from, because you are going to want to sit down for this. To understand this monumental mistake, you have to look at the burning limestone coastline. The Southern Alliance spent decades and billions of dollars burying missile silos, radar dishes, and explosive suicide boats in the sand. They hyped it up to the press as an impenetrable fortress, but in reality, it was just obsolete junk desperately painted over to hide how far behind they really were. At 4 o'clock that afternoon, feeling the suffocating crush of economic sanctions and staring down the massive presence of American strike groups, their Supreme Council huddled in a sweaty room and made the most reckless decision in the history of modern warfare. They decided to wipe the USS Sentinel off the board and permanently lock down the global energy supply. They genuinely believed a massive, overwhelming surprise attack would terrify Washington into abandoning the Middle East forever. It is genuinely mind-boggling how disconnected from reality they were. By 4:15, 12 different coastal bases woke up like a disturbed hornet's nest. Over at the Keshem complex, 25 supersonic cruise missiles were locked and loaded. Deep inside the pitch-black underground caves of Bandar Abbas, 40 medium-range ballistic missiles were topped off with fuel. Out on the water, over 60 high-speed boats packed to the brim with explosives were revving their engines for a massive swarm attack. Their battle plan was a textbook, overwhelming swarm tactic. Fire 132 weapons simultaneously from every possible angle, overwhelm the American Aegis defense grid, and watch the carrier burn. At 4:20, just 5 minutes before the end of their world, the Alliance commander stared at his glowing monitors and arrogantly bragged that the Americans would be swimming home. He thought his 100-plus weapons were enough to corner a giant. He completely forgot that America does not just play the game, they own the board. Imagine being the commander who pushed that fateful red button. Your chest is puffed out with pride, you are watching tons of steel and high explosives tear into the twilight sky, completely convinced you just made history. But you are tragically clueless. Just 1 single millisecond after the massive heat flare leaves the exhaust of your ballistic missiles, your life is completely over. At 4:25 and 1 second, orbiting high above the Earth, the infrared satellite networks of the Space Force do not even blink. In Colorado, incredibly advanced artificial intelligence algorithms instantly crunch the trajectories, speeds, and exact impact zones. In exactly 3 seconds, the command screens light up with a chilling confirmation. Target is the USS Sentinel Strike Group. 132 incoming. Impact is imminent. Before the enemy missiles even hit their top speed, the exact coordinates of every single launch pad, command bunker, and soldier involved have been locked in for execution. America does not wait for a missile to land to win a war. They determine the outcome the exact moment the fuse is lit. By 4:30, the sky above the strait is no longer just clouds and sunset, it is a massive, roaring meat grinder of high-intensity explosives. The Alliance commanders are holding their breath, waiting to hear the sweet sound of a sinking American carrier. But out on the water, the USS Sentinel and her escort destroyers have awoken the apex predator of the ocean. The Aegis combat system begins a flawless, devastating technical slaughter. First up are the SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors. The enemy ballistic missiles are screaming down from the edge of space at Mach 12, but American radars have them trapped in an electronic chokehold from thousands of miles away. The vertical launch tubes on the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers violently spit fire. High up at an altitude of 160 kilometers, direct kinetic impacts turn the enemy warheads into harmless radioactive dust. It is an absolute, deeply embarrassing reality check for the attacking forces. As the leftover garbage and the swarm of cruise missiles drop into the lower atmosphere, the second layer of hell opens up. 64 interceptors from the ESSM and SM-2 Block 3C systems carve glowing white paths across the burning red sky. The enemy missiles plunge like blinded beasts, gambling on pure luck, but the American targeting grid is an inescapable death sentence. One by one, the pride of the Alliance is vaporized into smoking scrap metal miles before they can even see the mast of the carrier. And down on the water, it is an absolute duck hunt. MH-60R Seahawk helicopters and massive naval guns are tearing the 60 suicide boats to shreds, turning the ocean into a chaotic mess of water columns and shattered fiberglass. At 4:38, the last 10 surviving warheads finally break into the innermost perimeter. This is when the phalanx close-in weapon systems loudly clear their throats. Picture 4,500 rounds of depleted uranium tearing through the air every single minute. It creates a dense, impenetrable wall of flying metal that sweeps away everything in its path. It was not even a defense at this point. It was an execution carried out by sheer, overwhelming kinetic force. 132 targets launched, and 132 targets violently shredded into dust. The final scorecard is almost sad. A few pieces of metal hit the flight deck and lightly scratch the paint. 2 sailors get minor scrapes from falling interceptor fragments. 0 American lives lost. They basically tossed a handful of pebbles at a speeding freight train. Now, as the Americans brush the dust off their shoulders, the true nightmare officially begins. The absolute golden rule of the American armed forces is brutally simple: nobody gets a do-over after taking a direct swing at Uncle Sam. By 4:40, while the last enemy missiles are still turning into confetti, Central Command gives the immediate green light for Operation Obsidian Scythe. This is not a measured warning or a diplomatic slap on the wrist. It is a flawless, microscopic removal of the enemy ability to wage war. The USS Sentinel catapults 70 F-35C Lightning II fighters and heavily armed Super Hornet jets into the air. They are carrying nearly 400 Stormbreaker smart bombs and HARM anti-radiation missiles. That alone is enough firepower to completely level a major city, but it is just the opening act. Deep beneath the cold, dark water, 6 Virginia-class nuclear submarines silently open their launch tubes. 200 Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles break the ocean surface, forming lethal smoke trails as they scream toward the coastline. Way out over the ocean, flying from the distant base of Diego Garcia, 4 B-21 Raider stealth bombers slip through the sky like shadowy phantoms from the next century. They are carrying 96 highly advanced JASSM-ER stealth cruise missiles. Each stealth bomber can silently erase 24 strategic targets at once without ever pinging an enemy radar screen. While the Alliance prayed for a miracle with 132 weapons, America answers with a merciless firestorm of over 2,500 precision strikes. At 4:50, right before the physical bombs even touch the sand, the United States triggers a permanent electronic blackout across the enemy defense grid. 15 EA-18G Growler jets flood the coast. In an instant, every single enemy radar screen turns into useless, blinding white noise. The billion-dollar defense networks the Alliance bragged about become giant, silent paperweights under the afternoon sky. Their commanders are screaming into dead radios, completely stripped bare and exposed to the undisputed digital dominance of a superpower. Then come the AGM-88B anti-radiation missiles, hunting down the remaining radar frequencies like starving wolves. In less than 120 seconds, the entire early warning network in a 400-kilometer radius is blown to pieces. No communication, no coordination, just a terrifying dead silence before the sky completely falls on them.
Specifically, we're looking to
By
expand
5
the
o'clock,
envelope,
the
adding
massive
external
B-21
stores,
raiders plunge the
lateral
night in
asymmetries
deep.
to continue
They
expanding
bypass
both
the
the
front lines
arresting
entirely
envelope
and target
as well as
the absolute
catapult
heart of
launch
the defense
envelope
industry.
of the F-35C.
Underground
As test
nuclear
pilots, it's our
research
responsibility
labs
to go
and massive
and
production
do and
factories
see
are utterly
different
gutted by
wind
smart bombs.
envelopes and wind
Every
cells
single
with
expensive
these same
assembly
source
line is
loadouts
turned into
before
a
the fleet
twisted
ever
heap
sees
of
it.
scrap.
That way, if there are any
The Southern
issues,
Alliance
we
will
as
not
test
be able
pilots
to
and
build
testers,
even a basic
the
cruise
X-23, we
missile
wanna
for the
see
next
these
50
first
years.
before
It is a
the
total
fleet,
technical
ever
erasure.
sees it.
Then the massive B-52H Stratofortress bombers arrive like mythical beasts of ruin to bring the devastating curtain down, dropping 300 heavy GPS-guided bombs on logistics airfields.
I think it's going really well. I think we're ahead of schedule.
The towering pillars of
kinda
fire
knocking
burn
things out of the
so
park. I think
intensely
things
that
went-
earthquake
from my
sensors
perspective, it went a lot
register
better than I would
tremors
have
up
thought.
to
The
magnitude
ship-
5 on
this
the
company
Richter
has been
scale.
pretty phenomenal. It's working with
At
us,
5:10
allowing us
in the
to
evening,
adjust as we
it
need
is
to make sure
completely
we
over.
get, whether it's the wind over the deck
45 short
or
minutes.
adjusting our schedule.
It takes
so we
longer
can
to
make sure we
watch a
get
single
everything.
half
So
of a
it's been
soccer
pretty awesome
game
working with
than
the
it
crew
did
here
for a
on the
global
GW.
superpower to permanently erase half a century of military infrastructure. Let us look at the final, savage match. 132 Alliance
Ship
missiles
trials are
fired,
always fun.
absolutely
There are always
nothing
things that
achieved.
are
In
completely
return,
unexpected
over
that,
4,000 enemy
the ship
soldiers are
throws in
dead,
your way, and there are
25
things that we
major
do
military
that we
bases
throw
are
in the ship's
completely
way.
gone,
And in
and
the end,
60
it's
support
that
hubs are
relationship
literally
that makes
wiped
it
off the face
work.
of the earth. American casualties are still sitting at an absolute, unbothered zero. The Southern Alliance desperately wanted to alter the course of history, but all they got was a flaming eviction notice from reality.
Get to fly it in the
As the
environment
thick
that we've
black
been
smoke
practicing
drifts
in and
over the
testing
Strait of
into, it's
Hormuz
just a
under the
really great
fading
and exciting
sun,
experience.
the brutal truth is
And
etched into
out
the
here
burning
with
sand.
the external loads and
Going
asymmetric
toe-to-toe
loads on
with
the
a global
airplane,
heavyweight
it is
means you are not just risking
almost
your fleet,
imperceptible to
you
tell
are
the difference
gambling
in the
away
flying
your
qualities of the
fundamental right
aircraft
to
between the two
exist.
different configurations.
Look closely at the
Jet
smoldering,
compensates for it very
radioactive
well,
ashes
and
of the
it
Southern
really makes
Alliance and ask
the
yourself,
task to the
who on
pilot
this earth is
seamless.
brave
We
enough
accomplished
or
121
completely
catapult
foolish
launches,
enough to
121
ever kick
arrested
the sleeping
landings,
giant again?
0 one-wires.